I've got another question here. Can you talk about managing the changes once one has made the career shift? I went from being self-employed for 10 plus years to a regular job with a government agency, and I'm having trouble managing the change in expectations, both my managers and my own.
So for that, so first of all, I just want to honor that person who made that shift from being in working for themselves to going back to working for someone else. And, in terms of managing expectations, I think, and this is one of the things that is coming up quite a bit in terms of creating, a safe, productive, psychologically safe, productive, flourishing environment, is that people often are afraid to communicate. So for that individual, and Mary, I would love to hear what you have to say, but for that individual, not to sound like a broken record, but getting clear on that pain point and what it is that you're trying to achieve in this new role, right? Like, what some of your concerns are, what your goals are, what your fears are, and using that to engage in a dialogue with your manager, with your new manager, to create a plan of action and co-create it, right? Like, let them know, here's what I'm running up against. Would love to work with you on how we can smooth this out, how I can create a path for growth and moving forward. But communication, not to sound trite, because these are tough conversations that we're having to have, but to be really clear on what the issue is, what it is you're trying to get to, and then make the ask of your manager to help co-create a plan to get what you need in that new role.
Great.
I totally agree with what you're saying, Kia. And let me know, my internet has said it's unstable. So let me know, Corbin, if I'm picking up too much and you need me to just raise a flag. But I totally agree. And I think being an entrepreneur, I think a lot of us need to kind of look at our careers as being an entrepreneur, because you also, what Kia was saying about, working with your manager on expectations, all of us need to be doing that, because you really should take charge of your career. And it's not that you have to, be worried about things the way an entrepreneur, like getting clients and things like that. But you do need to think of your job as a temporary thing, that if you're not enjoying it and you're not getting growth out of it, that you're thinking about leaving at some point, and not being so loyal to your company that you're just letting them take advantage of you in certain ways, but really working with the company to see if you can get the salary you need and the expectations that you want. As Abby mentioned in the beginning, it's a market that is benefiting the employees. So, in a market like that, you should really be thinking about how you can get what you want from your career, and, kind of take it back from your employers who might just not be having your best interest in mind. So I think being an entrepreneur can help you have more of that perspective.
Great. And we've got a question about how do we address gaps in the resume, especially caretaking, be it because of COVID or otherwise, but those more personal sort of career gaps.
Well, I had a client who raised a child till they were 7, and so had a 7-year gap in her resume, and was really able to get back into the workforce, and was able to, continue on that career really well. This happened recently. And so it is a good reminder to think about, some of the stuff that Kia mentioned around your mindset of like, believing that you can do it. But I also, one of the things that I like to tell my clients is to, not let your worries overcome the interview and the questioning process. anytime there's a red flag for you or a thing you're concerned about, oftentimes you're worried about it more than the person interviewing you is. And they may be asking you questions around like, oh, why is there a gap in your resume? And I always think about how they ask the question with a furrowed brow because they're curious, they're wondering, but it doesn't mean that they're upset about it. And so staying, kind of calm and no big deal about it can actually help. Just be like, I just raised a child, or I took care of my parents, or something like that. And if it's no big deal to you, it won't raise red flags for them. I think sometimes when you go into it with an energy of like, oh no, I have to over explain myself, and really taking the energy down. I had a client who was fired, and pretty brutally fired for no reason from her last job. And it really affected her self-esteem. And so, working on how you're going to approach that interview so that you don't bring all that sort of energy into it and make them wonder, what's going on. Just address it, not worrying too much about the gap and just moving forward, because you probably are really qualified and there was a good reason, and we're human beings. People should understand. And if they don't, maybe that's a red flag for the employer.
I would absolutely echo that. They are all human beings, and if they don't respect that, think about that critically. We got another question here. I'm trying to relocate, want to secure a job before I move. What is the best way to do that? How do we communicate relocation intentions or desires?
With the relocation, so I'm going to take this from the angle of, just working solely with you, not necessarily talking to a job. And I feel like relocation, that concept is easier now because we've been able to, work and do things remotely so easily through the pandemic. But I like to, and Mary talked about this earlier, about the importance of relationship building. So if you yourself are thinking, okay, now it's time for me to relocate, this is where using that career community is going to be critical, especially if companies are, kind of burned out on people, traveling and relocating or, working remotely. So this is a great time to leverage that career community to let people know, here's what I'm looking for. And specifically, I'm looking to do this in XYZ city or state, and letting your network help to do the heavy lifting of making those introductions, because, instead of relying on getting through an applicant tracking system, having that, a warm introduction is going to really go a long way to helping you make that particular career goal a reality. But it's also going to require, in addition to using your network, it's also going to require you, doing some cold outreaches on LinkedIn and start building those relationships of sharing what your interest is, sharing your expertise, and making that a bigger priority than, the perceived hurdle of a relocation, and that you're open to, negotiating what that timing of a relocation looks like. Because, oftentimes companies will want you to like start right away. I remember when I relocated, they were like, can you start, in 2 weeks? And I'm like, I've got to move my whole life, right? So again, we're human beings. So just communicating and being open about what your needs are, but just at a very base level, leveraging your career community to help you achieve that relocation goal is going to be critical.
Great. We've got another question here. I feel like people are ruling me out because I'm older and was at a high level in my last career. What can I do about that?
Yeah, when I think about, the concept of all the isms, ageism in this case, sexism, racism, those are real things that happen in the world, but you have to still get a job and move through it. And there are people who don't have those perspectives, right? As a recruiter, when I think about ageism and the recruiters here, can probably feel the same way, is we're not always looking for the candidate who is younger. And so when someone's worried about ageism, it's like, hey, there were times when I was looking for someone who was in a certain kind of age bracket or really experience level, number of years of experience, because there's that experience of, all those years doing something over and over, or having that leadership or perspective, are really valuable. And so I would say, back to that career community, is connecting with people who value that. And, knowing that, I like to admit that it's out there, and not, we don't want to gaslight people and say it's not there, because it is, but really looking at gravitating towards relationships that are really supporting you, and building that community of people who can support you through the fact that you are in that level in your career, and they're in that level in your career. And so everyone has this understanding of why that's important. Of course, it's important. It's so valuable to have experience. And I guess there can be challenges sometimes when you're trying to pivot in your career or take a step down, and that can bring up, why are you so experienced? So I don't know if that was the question of going to maybe a lower level career can sometimes trigger you're overqualified. But when it comes to just the fact that you have so much experience, it's just so important to build people around you and reach out to recruiters and people who are going to support that level of your career. And if you are looking for director level or higher level responsibilities, then looking at some specific executive coaching, executive recruiting firms that can, if you're going into some of the trying to talk to people who have lower level careers, then of course they're going to want to reject you for being too overqualified, but kind of leveling and building that community of people who are looking for people like you, where you fit that profile. Because I know as a recruiter, there were times when I was doing that.
Great. We got a question here about networking. I hear that networking events are a great way to go about career changes, but I'm not really sure how to find events that are outside of my field. And I feel nervous attending things where I don't necessarily know, I'm not the expert. How do I navigate that type of thing?
With regard to finding events that are aligned, first, and not to sound trite, but first get clear on what it is that you're trying to do, right? If you're wanting to move outside of your industry, where are you trying to move to? And then using those simple search terms to find something, leveraging your contacts to say, does anyone know of any events that are rooted in this? But specifically with regard to the discomfort of going to networking events, a couple steps that I like to advise people to do is really like a 3-part process. First is, once you've identified the event that you want to go to, if you're able to see the attendee list, I know that's hard, especially with the emergence of Eventbrite. It's hard to see who's coming, but if there's any way to see the attendees, then identifying if there's someone in that attendee pool that you would really like to connect to. Alternatively, if you're not able to see the attendees, at the very least, identify one of the event organizers that you can establish a relationship with. Get to the event if it's in person, but you could do this virtually too. Get to the event early and connect with that event organizer and ask them, I'm really looking to shift into this or learn more about X. Is there anyone that you would recommend that I connect with this evening or at this event? But then also the discomfort of going and connecting with people. I always like to advise, and I do this myself, give yourself an escape route. Say, okay, I'm only going to be at this event for 45 minutes. So, and I want to leave this event. I want to exit this event having connected with 2 people, right? If you give yourself these like small micro goals, micro actions, that can help like take down the discomfort level that you have with going to an event. Knowing your exit plan, knowing I just have to meet 2 people. I just have to have a conversation with 2 people and hear the people that I was recommended to speak with. And then you're out, right? And then, you know, you can follow up with people afterwards to help further advance your goals. But give yourself an escape plan and identify 1 or 2 people that you want to connect with.
Great. Got a question about LinkedIn. How should I update my LinkedIn to reflect the career transition I'm seeking to make?
So the question was about updating LinkedIn, like how to update LinkedIn. I definitely think the part of LinkedIn that I think is most important is the headline. So, you know, a lot of times people get confused. Should I have a creative headline or should I have a job title in my headline? The first thing you want to do is make sure that you update your headline at the top under your picture to something that doesn't say your current job. Because when I was a recruiter and I'd see someone's headline said something about their current job, my instinct was they probably don't want to leave if they're there, if you're currently working. And I, you know, as a recruiter, you can hear a lot of fancy advice about how to update your LinkedIn. But as a recruiter, I would use LinkedIn really quickly. So I'd navigate from one profile to another really quickly. So that catching the headline, what I want to do is know what job you want. Very similar to what Kia was saying earlier around knowing your intentions and knowing where you're heading in your career. Finding a job title or a headline that you can put in there that describes the job you want rather than the job you had if you're making any kind of transition in your career. And that can be, you know, you don't have to hire a copywriter, but it can take you some time to think about it. And it's something I help clients with a lot is what is the wording that you should say in there to make that first impression that you're someone who should be hireable. For example, I have actually a couple of clients. I have 2 clients right now that are in social media who are hoping to transition into more of a project manager or product manager role. And I'm encouraging them to put product manager on there rather than social media or project manager. And you can say, I managed these social campaigns as a project. I really encourage you to do that so that you can start framing your new career path as within the context of what you really are going after, rather than being sort of labeled the thing that you don't like doing.
If I can just add on to that, I have a client who is wanting to make a shift into design thinking. And the reality is, you know, design thinking is a relatively new career path, but she's been using that process her entire career. And so she updated her headline just recently to showcase that she just was honest. She's like, I'm an aspiring design thinker. But then in her about section, which I would say that's the next most important thing, because you can think of LinkedIn as your personal website if you don't have one already. In the about section is where she delivered on how she is already using design thinking without having a design thinking title. So leveraging your headline and your about section are really great ways to have someone walk away knowing about you, where it is that you're trying to go.
We got a follow-up question on LinkedIn there. I've updated my LinkedIn profile, yet recruiters see my job experience and keep contacting me about the old role I did. Is there a way around this to attract recruiters to the role I want to do?
Yeah, I'd love to know the details so we could help. But you know, what we were just describing, but also one of the things that I have to say is don't wait for recruiters to reach out to you. Reach out to recruiters, because I really think that being passive in the job search is really going to not help you that much. I like to think of it as there are companies that are good companies that you want to work for. And then there are some crappy companies out there, right? And so you don't want to be passive because you might just end up getting recruited from someone. No one here, obviously, works with crappy companies, but someone might recruit you and then interview you, and then you accept a job offer, and now you're working for a company that you don't want to work for, rather than really being proactive and thinking about what do you want, where do you want to work for, and starting to be proactive, reaching out to people. And, you know, I don't know how all the recruiters on this call today feel about this, but as a recruiter, you know, if I got an email with someone's resume, the worst thing that would happen is I'd respond and say, this isn't the type of role that I normally look for. It's not, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to someone and being proactive. And I actually welcomed, you know, I was working in a creative recruiting role. And so if someone sent me their design portfolio, I'd be like, great, this is what I'm looking for, is designers. If someone sent me a totally unrelated type of resume that wasn't something I'd look for, I would just write back and say, you know, I'm probably not going to have opportunities for you, and maybe give some links to places they could look at. So there's nothing, I would take the approach of reaching out to, and let those recruiters know who are reaching out to you what you're actually looking for. I did a lot of career coaching as a recruiter before I was a career coach, because, you know, sometimes you talk to people who say, I don't really want to do this anymore. You can only help them so much if that's not the type of roles you have, but, you know, just let people know so that they can know where you're coming from.
We've got some questions about the open to work badges on LinkedIn. Would be curious to hear each of your thoughts on this. Of course, this is going to be something that everyone has their individual preferences on, but do you recommend using the open to work label on LinkedIn, and how do you present that kind of thing?
I will say, when I first saw it, I was like, ugh, I wouldn't do that. But, and I wish I could remember what this particular individual said, but there was a pretty hot debate on a LinkedIn thread about this. And since reading that, I have since changed my opinion. And I wish I could remember exactly what was said that made me shift. But I mean, essentially to the point of what Mary was saying earlier, of we are all human, right? And if that means that this is going to open up the door to you getting, even if the recruiters are, you know, that see that open to work and the lead isn't exactly what you want, at least, you know, it kind of helps the recruiter to know, okay, you know, let me adjust my approach here, but it helps you to field and have access to more opportunities by doing that. So, so I like it, and I think it humanizes LinkedIn that has gotten to be a little bit of a commodity. So I'm plus wanting the open to work. Mary, what are your thoughts?
I agree with you too. Is it echoing for other people? I don't know. It sounds like it's echoing.
It's just started getting a little echoey there.
Okay. I think it's okay now. Yeah. So the yeah, I kind of go back and forth on it. So I think it is kind of a debate that I think there are both sides to. In one sense, it does signal recruiters that you are available and they're more likely to reach out to you. However, I'd say the only thing you don't want to do is keep it on there too long. You know, if you are, use it, maybe, I just came up with this on the spot. Maybe use it when you're really seriously job searching. So in the period of time where you're really putting in a lot of time and energy into the job search. And so don't keep it on there for a long period of time so that it looks like, if someone looked at you at one point. And then, so if you're just kind of thinking about job searching, maybe don't put it on there until you're really going to put your full effort into it, so that you're not, just looking like you were open to work for a very long period of time and people wonder about that. So I think that's the main thing I'd think about. And I'd say that for everything, like really thinking about your job search as, setting aside a time when you're really going to put in a lot of effort and trying to make some things happen rather than dragging it out. And what we were saying before about doom scrolling, just being really proactive and having set some goals and some intentions around it for a period of time where you can have the time and energy to put energy into it rather than just kind of doing it passively or casually. So that you can make some things happen.
Thanks. And that's we're right up at time here. If there are any final questions, we can probably still sneak something in if anyone's got anything, but otherwise, thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you for the great questions.
Yeah, this has been really great. It's been great, having this dialogue and being with everyone. So thank you so much for coming, and thanks for throwing this event.
Yeah.
I didn't unmute again. Like, that is so embarrassing.
Abby, you're wonderful.
Thank you so much, Elaine. If you like this event, we have other events. This is our third one that we've put on together, but each of our companies hosts other events. And it looks like Katie's dropped off. Does anyone have them to add in the chat? Or...
I do. I'll add them to the chat.
Thank you. Thanks everybody so much for joining.
Oh.
We got another question here in the chat. In phase 3 with Amazon for a recruiter position, they've made it clear they are seeking a person with technical experience. My background is in early career college intern prep. Any suggestions on skills to focus on? I'll say if they're interviewing you already, you've already gotten past the initial hurdle, so that's a very good sign. They're willing to consider where you are. Mary or Kia, anything?
Oh, let me read it again.
Yeah, I'm not sure what technical experience you're talking about specifically. They're seeking someone with technical experience. So I guess if you have that technical experience, if you don't have it, that's probably what you're asking, brush up on it, LinkedIn and, there's a lot of online learning that you can do to do some quick tutorials. So if there's like a specific code language or something like that, I'd say just doing a class in it to get brushed up on those specific skills.
And I would just amplify, I like that, and really amplifying the transferable skills, right? Of like what has brought you success in the role that you've had right now and how you can translate that, and then what your plan of action is, a la what Mary just said, your plan of action to close that gap to be even more relevant. But like Corbin said, if you've gotten this far in the interview with Amazon, I feel like you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and take that class and then say you have knowledge of it. Right? It's all in language. So you don't want to go into the interview saying, oh, I don't know much about Boolean. It looks like what you're saying that is. And Abby says Boolean's overrated.
It's just like, it's what you do when you search on Google and you put like Portland and restaurants, like the space in between. Like, it's not that technical. People make it seem like it was like really, really wild thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good luck, Stephanie. All right, everyone, I have to drop, but thank you. It was wonderful to be a part of this, and I hope that this was helpful for our participants today.
Thanks again, Kia, for your time, and Mary as well. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
all.
thank you for inviting us.
Yes.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Have a
everyone.
great day. Good luck.